So, same team, same goal, different positions. Playing your role well. Model family. That was a challenge. I found that a challenge. So I was sharing with my small prayer triplet this morning at devotions. When I hear prophetic words for the church like that, I'm always thinking, Lord, okay. I'm currently the lead steward here. So Holy Spirit, help me steward this thing well, so we don't miss out on what you're planning to do. So that is my prayer to the Lord. Okay, so I'm going to invite Pastor Wale. He's going to introduce us to the book of Titus, and then we will continue the conversation. We'll break into groups, and so welcome as he comes.
Thank you very much. Something Jake said yesterday, the thing you are part of is much bigger than the part you play. You know, and I think it's good to remember that. I definitely wrote that down. It's good to be mindful of the part you play, but it's also mindful. It's good to also be mindful of the bigger picture, much bigger picture. Anyway, the next few minutes, let me check. We want to look at Titus. We can't afford to look at the whole book because we haven't got all day. So we'll just look at the second chapter of the book of Titus. Without opening, how many verses are there? Don't open yet. How many verses? There's a suite for anyone who gets it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's it. 15. 15 verses there. So, I mean, you know that most of the named letters to individuals in the New Testament are actually, apart from one or two, are pastoral. They are, to Timothy and Titus are pastors that Paul addresses his letter, those 3 letters to. So we're looking at one of these today, in keeping with our theme, generation to. Generation to. So that's what we're looking at. So, before we look at chapter 2, let's look at something about, let's look at chapter 1 verse. We'll look at that together and then we'll break into groups to read chapter 2. The first chapter of Titus. Oh, come on. Where's it? Oh, good. Verse 5. Titus 1:5. Let's read that together. It doesn't matter what your translation is. After go. That's it, really. So it's just good to bear that in mind as we look at chapter 2. Paul identifies why he left him in Crete. So you will know where Titus was when Paul wrote the letter to him. The instruction he had to put things in order. Another thing Jake said yesterday is that church culture may not necessarily be the same as kingdom culture. There's a kingdom, there is a church. So we just want to look at things from what God had in mind from the beginning. Does that make sense? Okay, so just bear that in mind. The reason I left in Crete was that you might straighten out what was left unfinished and appoint elders in every town as I directed you. It would be good to have 4 or 5 people in the group, not more than 5. That will be helpful for healthy discussion because we'll have about 15-20 minutes to look at Titus chapter 2, and then there are questions we'll be looking at as well. Does that make sense? Let me read out the questions. That might be helpful. I think that will be useful so that when you look at them, when you are reading and you are discussing it, you have those questions in mind. What kind of things should Titus speak about or teach? What is sound, depending on your translation, what is sound doctrine? Do you know of other passages where it is used? And then list the groups of people Paul is addressing, especially in the first 10 verses. Just general questions we'll be looking at. And some of the things he addresses to those individual groups, what do they really mean? How can we apply them in our situation, especially in a church like ours, where we are so diverse, you know. So those are some of the things we are looking at. What should young be taught? You know, along with young men, what should Titus or the ministers do? So those are some of the things we're looking at, practical things. But I guess when we come together, we'll be able to wrap these things up. Does that make sense? So let's break into groups of 4s and 5s. And quickly, you can turn the chairs around and just have that. It's not a preaching center, so just discuss this. You have a few minutes to read the 15 verses and then discuss it.